Hello everyone, welcome back to the Acolyte Podcast. Today we are talking about House of the Dragon again. I wanted to just get a little bit of background information for you on each of our characters we'll be meeting in this first season. I'm not really wanting to get into too many spoilers. I understand that this will be a slightly different story than what we got in the Fire and Blood book we've received from George R.R. Martin. A lot of these characters' backgrounds are open for the show writers and the actors to interpret and kind of build. There's just particular events that are laid in stone that they cannot skip over. Alright everyone, before we start, be sure to leave us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified the next time we release a video. Alright everyone, let's begin. Alrighty, it is time to talk House of the Dragon. Let's start with one thing that was most exciting to me is that we got Ramin Djawadi back to do the music, which means we're still going to get a lot of the similar vibes. I imagine he's going to stay true to how he crafted a lot of the music for Game of Thrones. Next is that we know this series is being directed mainly by Miguel Sapochnik. We also have a few other directors credited. Ryan Condal is going to be our main creator and writer, as well as George R.R. Martin being credited as a main writer and creator, which is really, really comforting. He's going to be as involved as he was for the beginning of Game of Thrones, which was really the best seasons were the seasons where George was involved. Alright, so let's get down to the brass tacks. Our story begins in an era about 100 years after Aegon's conquest. That's why you're hearing a lot of talk about the height of the Targaryen dynasty. This is before they really started to make some of their dumb mistakes. So we had Aegon, we've had the Field of Fire, and he's deceased, and we've also had his son Rhaenys, the son he had with Rhaenys, his favored wife. Rhaenys faced the Faith Militant for, the polygamy. He married his children to each other, and the Faith only accepted Aegon because of the dragons. And that's really where the first time you hear of the Faith Militant, all of that was dealt with again by Cersei, and that's where you see the circulatory storytelling in the Song of Ice and Fire really comes in the writings and stories of his prequel series, the Dunk and Egg novels, and the House of Fire and Blood novel. It's where we're going to get a lot of our circulatory storytelling, where you're going to see similar aspects and different parts of the story that remind you of Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. That was done on purpose. It's planned. So after Rhaenys, you have Maegor the Cruel, who is son of Visenya, and he is the one who built Maegor's Holdfast. That's why it's called Maegor's Holdfast. In the Red Keep, he murdered all of the builders afterwards, so that way he would be the only one who would know its secrets. He also had 6 brides, 3 who had been widowed and he knew were fertile. They were his black brides. And then after Maegor, we have good King Jaehaerys, and a lot of the seeds for the Dance of the Dragons people are going to say, and a lot of people talk about how they were sown during Viserys' reign, but I feel like some of that disrespect Jaehaerys throws out, especially towards the Velaryons, and it's so shocking because his mother's a Velaryon, some of that shade really just came back and bit him. Maybe not him specifically, but it didn't leave the Targaryens sitting too well, that's for sure. And the reason why these points are so important to think about is because the big difference between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones is the main family we followed in Game of Thrones was the Starks. We started with the Stark children, and we watched the power games everyone else in the realm played utterly destroy that family. And that puts this show at a completely different front, where it's still the same power games and they're still tearing apart families, but it's a family tearing itself apart. It's nobody else's fault but the Targaryens that what happened to them happened. So back to Jaehaerys. When his son Aegon died, he held a council and they were trying to decide who would be the new heir. And at this point, Rhaenys is passed over the first time. Rhaenys being the child of Aegon, the heir to Jaehaerys. And she was pregnant at the time she was passed over. Married, pregnant, had a child of her on the way. And this was when Alysanne left Jaehaerys for the second time. It's the Great Schism. Because if the realm didn't need a queen, why would Jaehaerys? If a woman's not good enough to rule, then why did he need her? And she left. And then we see a big schism between the Velaryons, which had always been the strongest supporters of the Targaryen faction. And Balon is marked as the heir, and that would be Viserys and Damon's father. And whenever he dies, we see the next Great Council, and this is the council we're supposed to see in the show, so I'm not going to discuss it too much. Where this series is supposed to start is not exactly clear to us yet. I'm sure in a week we will know whenever the first episode airs, and we hope to give you our commentary on the first and then the following episodes afterwards. So let's begin a little bit of our character dive. We're going to begin with the Targaryens. Obviously, they don't call it the House of the Dragon for nothing. They are dragons.
Because it's supposed to be uncomfortable to sit on, I think. You know, I didn't have a pillow, by the way. I suffered on that throne. So, but yeah, it's not a comfortable thing. It's made of swords. So, you know, it shouldn't be a relaxing experience sitting up there.
Our first Targaryen of interest in House of the Dragon is going to be King Viserys the First Targaryen. In the show, he is going to be played by Paddy Constantine. And what we know of Viserys from the books is he's a people pleaser who doesn't really like conflict. He's portrayed as very generous and willing to just give people kind of what they want to make them happy. But whenever he disagrees with something, or once he's set his word, it's done. He's steadfast in his decisions. And he's known to feast like our two younger Baratheon brothers. He's a fan of tourneys and trying to keep his populace happy. His father was Balon, and he died after Jaehaerys Targaryen was named him the heir at the Great Council of 101. And it seems like we're going to get a more fleshed out character from the interviews we've seen of Paddy Constantine. And that's why Constantine, his last name is so hard to say, but that's one reason why I've clipped some of those interviews and showed them here. It's giving me faith that he is delving into that character and really willing to give us some of the things we've been asking for.
He's a kind man. I think he inherited the crown because he was, in my view, he was a good scholar and a man of good temperament and a kind man who's trying to sort of keep the peacetime going within the kingdom. And I think that's why he was chosen as king. But he's a man who's what I wanted to do with the character when I read the script was just imbue him with as much humanity as I could, and bring as much kind of life to him as I possibly could. But he's a man that cares about things. There's great tragedy in him. He loves his family. He cares about his position. But he's also carrying something else that's a kind of secret that's revealed in the show that, kind of refers to the potential fall of man in the future. So there's lots of different things going on.
The next dragon we are going to be talking about is going to be Damon Targaryen. He is Viserys' younger brother, and they have your tropic older brother, younger brother relationship. The good, true older brother, the ornery, sort of chaotic younger brother.
Sort of heartbeat for me, really, and I had such a fabulous time with Paddy. It's quite a complicated relationship, but I sort of hope that me and Paddy found a lot of depth and a lot of richness in the work that we did. But really, everything is about his brother for Damon. Yeah.
Damon, our Dark Prince, was born the second son to Prince Balon and wielded Dark Sister. Was famed as the most experienced swordsman of his time, but was defeated by Kristen Cole twice. So take that for what it is. He rode Caraxes, the Bloodworm, and we'll get to see that in the show. And one callback to the original story we have is the fact that he was knighted at 16. It's a Jaime nod, and it's supposed to be done on purpose, in my opinion. A lot of the different characters in House of the Dragon will harken back to Game of Thrones. So Damon was dashing and dangerous in his youth. He is our rogue, our dark and mysterious man. He is skilled in tourneys and in hunting, and he is very, very famous with the ladies and the small folk. When King Viserys gives him command of the City Watch, he arms those men, and he is the one who gives them their gold cloaks, and really is the one who instills them with the pride in their position that later ends up leading them to their corruption. But because of the safety he brings to the city, he becomes very popular with the less fortunates. The next character I would like to cover isn't actually a Targaryen at the point of the show, but she counts. She is a dragon, and that is Rhaenys Velaryon, the queen who never was.
Never was, yeah. What does that mean? What does that mean to Rhaenys?
What does the title mean?
Yeah, how does she relate to?
It really pisses her off, I think. She should have been the queen. And thank you very much. And it's kind of annoying that she isn't. And it's also kind of annoying that people keep reminding her that she isn't. So, that's what I have to say about that.
So the reason why I love that clip is because it really embodies the energy that I wanted out of Rhaenys. She is supposed to be pissed off that she was passed over. Her child was passed over. That was insulting. Her claim was through her father, Aemon Targaryen, the first son to good King Jaehaerys. Now, Rhaenys married Corliss Velaryon when she was 16 years old, and she was already a dragon rider. She rode the Red Queen, Milos, and she actually showed up to her wedding on her dragon. Let's just take a moment to soak in this queen. She is fucking amazing, and she deserved that crown. She deserved the throne. All of it. She deserved everything. So, the first time she is passed over was because her father was killed by a stray arrow during battle against Moorish pirates. And this is one of the many really sus Targaryen deaths. This led to the first time that she was passed over. She was actually pregnant at the time, and she'd mentioned the possibility of her carrying a male heir. But she was passed over. She ended up giving birth to Maester Milos, and her husband left. They returned to Driftmark, and they weren't the only ones. Rainier's mother, who was Jocelyn Baratheon, and her uncle, Bormund Baratheon, left, returned to their homes, and even Alysanne left her husband at the time. She told him famously, "If the realm doesn't need a queen, then why do you need me?"
My books are fantasies, obviously, but I do follow history a lot. I get inspiration from history, and then I take elements from history and I turn it up to 11, obligatory Spinal Tap reference, or to 111. Game of Thrones, as many people observe, was based very loosely on the Wars of the Roses. This show was based on an earlier period of English history called the Anarchy. And, I pilfered freely from real history. When Henry I, the King of England, when his only legitimate son drowned while trying to cross the English Channel, he was left with only one legitimate child, which was his daughter Matilda, and he named her his heir, and he made all the lords of the kingdom swear their fealty to her. And then some years later he died, and most of the lords of the kingdom forgot about that oath or said, no, it doesn't apply, because here comes her cousin, Stephen, who crosses the channel quickly and steals the treasury and gets himself crowned king, and you entered the period called the Anarchy, where Maud, or Matilda as she was known, and Stephen fought for a decade, 2 decades, whatever, yeah.
Horrible and bloody.
Yes, all the good stuff, none of the building roads, peaceful things.
It's important to know context, and that's why I thought that last little tidbit from George was important, because he's not a sexist. That's not why you never see a queen on the throne. He actually just writes characters, and he said that many, many times. One thing that drives him is writing about the human heart and the conflict it puts itself in. And that's very telling in his novels, and that's why a lot of his villains aren't even real villains. You connect with them so well. And speaking of villains, our next dragon is Rainier.
Yeah, I think Rainier is fueled by that old Targaryen stuff. And I think probably the journey she goes on in the series is one of working out when to let that fire burn and when to dampen it.
Now, calling Rainier a villain can be considered jumping the gun just a touch. She just wasn't remembered very well in the histories of Westeros. And I think a large factor in that is that our histories are written in the Citadel, which is in Old Town. And the Greens are the faction of the High Towers who reside in Old Town. And that would explain quite clearly why their opposers were depicted not well at all. Rainier is not very well depicted in her later years. But in her earlier years, she is fun-loving. She's called the Realm's Delight. She's beautiful. She's your typical Targaryen princess. She rides the dragon Syrax at the age of 7, and she's the cupbearer for her father by the age of 8, and she adores her uncle Damon, absolutely smitten with him, until she sees him defeated by Kristen Cole, and then she just adores Kristen. And I feel like that relationship is going to be played as more of the Sansa-Loras relationship, where it's a young, naive girl favors the strong protector without really being able to see his true colors. Rhaenyra, in her later years, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with her character. She is not, like I said, described very well, being called the Whore of Dragonstone, the half-year queen, Rhaenyra the Pretender. But Martin has always described her as strong and beautiful, stubborn, but smart, quick to anger, and slow to forget. So I'm very intrigued to see what Emma's going to do with her character moving forward. And I'm intrigued to see exactly how they're going to play out her relationship and future marriage to her uncle.
It does feel great because other than, as we spoke about yesterday, other than certain people's viewpoints about someone who looks like me playing this part, it hasn't really played a part in the role, in my experience on the job with my fellow actors. As I said, there are people outside who find it a little hard to stomach that someone who looks like me would play this part, but that's an issue they have to deal with. I don't have to, you know. So I just have to. The issue is always the same. I just have to say the lines convincingly and avoid bumping into the furniture. So as long as I do that. Yeah.
Okay. And with that last video, I think it's time to add my voice into the mix. I want to say that it's utterly heartbreaking that this man has reduced his job to speaking lines and not bumping into furniture because of the hate and vitriol he's gotten over the internet. It's absolutely disgusting. I've never seen this man act, but I am excited. I am so excited to see him portray one of the most riveting characters in this book. And that's going to be one of the most influential and driving characters in this show. Corliss Velaryon is absolutely fucking amazing, okay? He's a seafarer. His whole family rides dragons, but he doesn't need to. He conquered so many... I just need to stop. That character is fabulous. And the fact that we don't get to hear the actor's opinions on the character because the character has now been degraded to the point of his skin color, I'm just disappointed. I'm very disappointed in the fan community. I just feel like as long as we are getting the characters true and the information and the story true, then the color and the sex of the person portraying the character really shouldn't matter. And with that, we're going to move on to the aspects of Corliss that make him the true Banff of House of the Dragon. Alright. He was known as the Sea Snake, was fabled Lord of the Tides and the Master of Driftmark, and the lead of House Velaryon. He married Rhaenys whenever he was 37, by her choice. And he had so many journeys. Oh my gosh, they're truly Banff. He became a captain at the age of 16 when he sailed the Cod Queen, and repeated this journey every single year as a different member of the crew, learning the ship. So he really knew what was into captaining his vessel. He sailed his Sea Snake on his 9 journeys around Essos, and in these 9 journeys, he made his house rich. At the height of after his journeys, House Velaryon was richer than both House Lannister and House Tyrell. This man is awesome. And him and his wife are really the true power couple of this show. You'll never be able to convince me otherwise. Okay, just a little bit of backstory info on his 9 voyages. His first voyage, he sailed beyond the Jade Gates of Karth to Yiti and Lang, and he returned with silks and spices and jade, and that's when he doubled the wealth originally. First trip, doubled the wealth. In his second voyage, he went to Ashai, where he, quote unquote, lost his love and half his crew. And in Ashai, Corliss also supposedly saw the ship of Elissa Farman. And Elissa Farman's dragon eggs, a lot of people in the community feel that these are Dany's dragon eggs. And in his third voyage, he became the first Westerosi to navigate the 1,000 islands in the Shivering Sea and to visit Nefar, the Ngai, and the Mazilvi. So this guy, badass. He filled all of his ships with gold on these journeys, bought 20 more ships while he was at Karth, and returned. It's so funny. It says all 14 ships returned to Driftmark, but the elephants died. But this is where House Velaryon truly gets all its wealth and prestige, is because of Corliss. And I feel like as long as the fans don't destroy their opportunity, we could lead into another spin-off just about Corliss. I would love to see that Corliss' 9 Journeys show, and to see the real building of his relationship with Rhaenys. And then we would get so much more of the Queen Who Never Was than what we're going to get in the show. As long as the stupid idiots on the internet don't screw it up.
Her background, Emily, you should talk about that because it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I find it one of the best ways to get into character. And for Alicent, we had so much creative freedom, all of us as a group, including Millie and Reese as well, to sort of make up this whole backstory to her. Obviously, when we find Alicent, she doesn't have a mother, and there were some gaps that we had to fill, and so to sort of figure it all out, I just started journaling, and with the advice of Miguel and Ryan, I managed to come up with some form of backstory, and it proved to be very, very useful. So I think that ties into the family thing as well, is that there's a lot of Alicent's family that you don't see. But for the relationship between Alicent and Otto, family is such a key word, because it's all about bloodline. I mean, that's kind of what the show's all about. So,
is there anything you could share that you found through that process?
I think it just gave me a deeper understanding of Alicent. I think she's so multifaceted. There's so many layers to her. I think lots of people are expecting her to be the villain of the show already, but I think bringing her in younger, there was a lot more to explore. I think we were saying earlier as well that we didn't really talk to our older counterparts because there's such a huge character progression for both Alicent and Rainier. I've never had the freedom to be able to create a whole human being like this before, so it was so much fun being able to go so in depth with her.
I agree with Emily in that last clip, I feel like a lot of the fandom has already placed Alicent directly in that box of villain, and she is definitely more than that. The Hightowers are probably going to be portrayed as having evil motivations. Definitely Otto is not purely driven. But Alicent, she is just trying to find a place in the world that was already crafted. She is trying to cleave any bit of power that she can, because that's what society is in Westeros. If you aren't going to cleave for power, you're going to get stepped on by those who do cleave for power. So I don't think we can hold that against Alicent. I'm just very intrigued to see what they're going to do with her character. As was said in the clip, they have lots of room to play with in the earlier years of Alicent. The only real depictions we get of Alicent are her cutthroat drivings to put her children on the throne. And I know that there is so much more there. So much more there. And I'm excited to see where the show is going to take us.
Alicent starts off as Rhaenyra's best friend and daughter to the hand of the king. And she is quite an anxious rule follower in comparison to how free and mischievous Rainier is.
I play Otto Hightower, Alicent's father. He's the hand of the king. He's an astute, high-functioning political creature, but he struggles with some of the decisions he is forced to make.
Oh, Otto Hightower. What is there to say about Otto Hightower? If you're getting Tywin Lannister vibes, you are supposed to. I almost feel like he's going to be purposefully a second-rate Tywin Lannister. Like, he's almost good enough, but not quite. His obsession with the Damon really cracks me up, because he's played himself into being Damon's enemy. He despises Damon entirely, views Damon's greed for the throne as a threat, and kind of is to his line because of Alicent's children. His grandchildren have a claim to the throne. If you want to support that claim, that is your opinion. I consider myself a true Blacks supporter, but we are going to carry on like I don't have any sort of vendetta against Otto Hightower. But I think it's just really funny how he considers himself Damon's biggest enemy, because Damon doesn't consider Otto Hightower as much of a threat, in my opinion at least. I don't view Damon as the type of man who has an enemy in his mind. He has to view you as a threat first, to consider you as his worst enemy, his biggest threat, so to speak. And that's really my thoughts on Otto so far. I am intrigued to see what other motivations for him they are going to portray in the show, to see if there will be any maesterly conspiracies. As an acolyte of such organizations, let me tell you, corruption, you'll definitely find it there. So I'm intrigued to see how they're going to play that. The next character up to bat, while we're in the camp of the Greens, is Sir Kristen Cole. And he was not always an Alicent supporter, and one of the most intriguing stories that takes place in the beginning of this portion in Targaryen history is what drives him to leave Rhaenyra's camp. And there are many different rumors in the books as to what was the driving force, but we don't have a clear deciding factor, so to speak, that really pushed him. There is one night, there is a clear moment, but we don't know exactly what happened in that moment. So I'm very intrigued to see how the show is going to have that moment play out. Now, Kristen Cole is a knight from House Cole in Dorne, and he later becomes the Lord Commander of the King's Guard. And like I said previously, there's a lot of Loras and Sansa vibes here, but not in the same sense. Kristen is not curious in the same sense that Loras was. We'll get that out of Rainier, and that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, it plays no harker to the kind of person he is. It's Rainier just seems to have a sort of innocence in her eyes when viewing Kristen, and I feel like somehow that innocence is going to be washed away. Mysaria, the White Worm. She's also called Lady Misery, and her role in the beginning of the story is going to be as Damon's lover. She's also one of his most trusted confidants, and all we really know about her is that she's a dancer from Lys. I'm intrigued, fascinated. I'm really worried they're going to play her as our Eastern Witch, and I expect more out of these show writers, and especially out of George R.R. Martin when it comes to character depth. So I'm hoping we're gonna get a fascinating backstory, something to show what her motivations are. Yeah, I would hate to see this character just be one note. It deserves better than that. We deserve better than that. The actress deserves better than that. Most of the rest of our characters that we know are going to be in the show, we don't have much information on them. Sir Harwin Breakbone Strong, we know is captain of the City Watch and is going to eventually be a rumored lover of Princess Rainier and her the supposed father of her oldest sons. We're also going to see Lord Jason Lannister, the Shield of Lannisport and the Warden of the West. I'm actually surprised we're going to get as much of him as we are. Next is Maester Milos, and he is in the books frequently referenced, and his written accounts are usually brought up by Archmaester Gildane, one of the unreliable narrators we have in Fire and Blood. We're also going to see Sir Harold Westerling. He was a Lord Commander under Viserys before Kristen Cole. Laura Strong, who is the brother to Breakbones. We're going to see Lord Lyman Beesbury. He was the head of House Beesbury during Jaehaerys' reign. Yeah, the rest of the characters, we're gonna get Alicent's children, Rhaenyra's children, the children of Corliss and Rhaenys, and I expect we will see those characters grow and shown how they will interact. I'm just very excited. That's all I can really say. We have less than a week now for the first episode, and I'm just hoping it's not going to be as disappointing as season 8. Alright everyone, that gives you my thoughts on the characters so far before the first episode anyway. Like I said, I'm hoping to release a reaction / commentary video after the first episode and every episode following, just to kind of give you my thoughts and opinions on how they're handling it, because they really have everything going for them. They have the writers, they have the actors, they have the makeup, the costuming, everything they had going for them, just like they had in season 8. With that, be sure to leave us a like and a subscribe. Hit that notification bell to make sure you're being informed whenever we release our next video. I just want to take a moment and say that we still plan on releasing our audio book readings. Those are something that we really like to do. I just wanted to get this video together before it was too late. Alright, see you next time.